Hello, I'm David Eads with a summary of the BBC World News. Police here in the UK have arrested a fourth person following the discovery of 39 bodies in a lorry east of London on Wednesday. The refrigerated container had arrived from Zeebrugge in Belgium. A number of Vietnamese families have contacted the BBC to say they fear that several of those who died may well be their relatives. Andy Moore reports.
The BBC has been contacted by 6 Vietnamese families who believe their loved ones may have been on the lorry. They include Pham Thi Cha Mi, who was 26. At the time the container was crossing to the UK, she sent a series of text messages saying, "I am really sorry, Mum and Dad. My trip to a foreign land has failed. I am dying. I can't breathe. I love you very much. I am sorry." The BBC has also been contacted by the family of Nguyen Dinh Luong, who was 20 and also missing. On Thursday, Essex police said the victims were believed to be Chinese. They now say it's a developing picture, and they have made this appeal to anyone who thinks their relatives may have died.
Good evening. I know you may be worried about speaking to the police, and I would like to reassure you that we just want to be able to give the victims' families answers about what has happened.
The work of removing the bodies and transporting them to hospital for post-mortem examinations continues. Essex police said they would not comment on what they called speculation about the nationalities of those who had tragically lost their lives. Andy Moore, BBC News.
Well, I've been speaking to Tu Phan from the BBC's Vietnamese service about the text messages that some of the victims did apparently send.
The messages were so hard-hitting. In particular, there's one from a 26-year-old lady called Pham Thi Cha Mi. The text actually said, "I'm really sorry, Mum and Dad, I'm very sorry. My trip to a foreign land has failed. I'm dying, I can't breathe." You know, it's really heartbreaking to read such messages.
It hurts to hear it again. But it also creates a sense that then she felt like a failure.
Yes. Yeah, so in Vietnam there's quite a lot of expectation for these people to come to a foreign land to find work and to send a lot of money back home to help out their relatives back in Vietnam. And these families, they pay tens of thousands of pounds, you know, to come to the UK or other countries to find work for a better life.
That's Tu Phan there of the BBC's Vietnamese service. To Chile now, where the governor of the capital, Santiago, says that more than 1 million people have been taking part in a peaceful march through the city. They're calling for measures to reduce inequality, and organisers say this was the biggest demonstration Chile has ever seen. It follows a week of often violent protests, as Rich Preston reports.
A week of anger on the streets of Chile. At least 16 people have been killed since protests began last Friday. Many more have been injured. Triggered by a rise in public transport fares, these protests have turned into a mass movement against poverty and inequality. More than 500,000 people turned out on Friday in Santiago, filling the streets of the capital. Allegations of rights abuses by security forces have prompted the United Nations to say it will send a team of investigators to the country.
We have received reports that 18 people have died, including a 4-year-old child. The circumstances are unclear. And we've received reports that 582 people have been wounded, of which 295 by live ammunition.
As night fell, it wasn't long before tensions rose once again. President Sebastián Piñera has announced reforms in an attempt to appease protesters, but those on the streets say they won't stop until they see real change. Rich Preston, BBC News.
Let's catch up on some of the day's other news from around the world for you. The opposition movement in Bolivia has staged another mass rally in the city of Santa Cruz de la Sierra. It follows the electoral authorities' decision to declare President Evo Morales the winner of last week's poll. He beat his closest rival, Carlos Mesa, by 10.6 percentage points, just enough to avoid a runoff in December. Millions of Californians face having their power cut once more as the emergency services continue to battle two rapidly spreading wildfires in the state. Earlier, the governor of California declared a state of emergency in Sonoma and Los Angeles counties because of those fires. He also accused the power companies of failing to conduct routine maintenance and putting profits before people. Rugby fans are gathering in Yokohama in Japan as England take on World Cup reigning champions New Zealand in the first semi-final of the tournament. England are bidding to reach their first final since 2007. They're up against a side who've won their last 18 World Cup matches. They've played each other 3 times at World Cups, all won by New Zealand. This script was written by a New Zealander. Now, at least 40 people are thought to have been killed after another day of violent anti-government protests across Iraq. Security forces used live rounds and tear gas against demonstrators. 8 people died in the capital, Baghdad, the rest in clashes in the south of the country. In the city of Nasiriyah, the authorities imposed a curfew. The protests themselves, well, they began 2 weeks ago. They were against corruption, lack of jobs and economic hardship. Ali Maqbool has this.
Anti-government demonstrators took to the streets of Baghdad in their thousands, surging towards its green zone. But as they did, they were met by tear gas and clashes with the police. The violence marked exactly 1 year of the current government, another year filled with economic hardship for Iraqis, spiralling unemployment and poor provision of basic services. Already this month, nearly 200 protesters have been killed across the country in a brutal response by the state to the demonstrations. He was standing next to me when he was attacked by the security forces, says this man, and they attacked him. These are the most violent days in Iraq since the country declared victory over the Islamic State group 2 years ago. But the frustration has built up through years of broken promises of a better future. Many were killed and vast numbers injured in these latest clashes, but they vowed to keep taking to the streets until they see change. Ali Maqbool, BBC News in northern Iraq.
A judge in the United States has ordered the Trump administration to hand over grand jury evidence from the Mueller inquiry into Russian election meddling. Democrats in Congress have been demanding those documents as part of their growing impeachment inquiry. Our North America correspondent David Willis explains the importance of this ruling.
It's significant for 2 reasons. It establishes the legality of the ongoing impeachment investigation in the House of Representatives. Mr. Trump and his allies had argued that that inquiry is illegitimate. All the time, the House hasn't had a full vote on the matter, while the judge disagreed. And she also established that members of Congress will be allowed to view an unredacted version of Special Counsel Robert Mueller's report. Now, previously, only redacted versions have been available to members of Congress. To give you some idea, it's a nearly 450-page report, Robert Mueller's effort there, and the first volume of 2 contains some 240 redactions. So there's clearly a lot of material in there which House Democrats believe could possibly be of use to them as part of their ongoing impeachment investigation into President Trump.
David Willis with the latest there. That is the news. Coming up next, Brexit reports. Stay with us.